This is Lightning Power Lunch on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
It was great. We got the win, obviously, but the way we got to the lead and the 4-1 lead, and there was a lot of winning hockey in there. And the reason we went, we took a little bit of a step back and gave it up because we got away from winning hockey. And Cherny would be the first to tell you, probably a tough pinch on his part. And then, it's 4-4 and whatever, we lose a draw and they, shooter throws it in the net. So, 4-1 goes to 4-3 and now you're grinding. And so there was so much good about tonight. And there was a lot of winning habits. We just got to keep shuffling the losing ones out. And, but to compete and, to go down shorthanded at the end there and huge draws by Tony. We needed that. And so hopefully we can continue that moving forward.
I think that's right. I think the way he described that, Coach Cooper there in the media scrum after the game, we needed that. Was it ugly at times? Yeah, no doubt. Was it pretty? No. Face-offs were a problem.
At times it was.
Yeah, face-offs.
At times it was very pretty.
It was
Face-offs were not pretty.
Face-offs weren't great. Allowing Boston to chip away and hang on, that's made you feel a little uncomfortable if you were a Lightning fan, but there were some positives from that game, and I think maybe easier to dissect and correct coming off a win than a loss. And look, anytime you win in Boston, you have to feel really good about that. What happens tonight against the Caps? Mish, you and I will break that down in a little bit. We want to recap what we saw last night, of course, with our audience at Bolts Radio.
We can even touch on Saturday's game, as ugly as that one was, because we haven't had a show.
I don't want to talk about that game.
Well, I think we can use it as we can use it as a point of contrast.
For sure, we can.
Particularly as the Lightning swapped up the lines a little bit from Saturday to Monday.
Maybe the biggest thing we're taking away heading into the game tonight were the different line combinations that certainly, partner, and I'll kick it to you, certainly provided some positive results yesterday, which was great to see because we kept talking about, well, not so much depth scoring, although you wanted to see some other guys score, and whether it was a Yanni Gourde or a Bjorkstrand or anybody else not named Kucherov, although you'd like to see Kucherov pile up the points like we're used to seeing, Point, Hagel, Cirelli. You wanted to see some offense come to life. And whatever John Cooper did yesterday worked. Does that stay put tonight? You would think to start. It sure does, but maybe the biggest positive and development, in addition to the goaltending, which I thought was solid. Anytime you went on the road with your backup, I always say this, that's a big, big deal, especially on the road against Boston, who came in playing well, and it's a tough place to play, partner. I think that's something you can take away, but I think you're right. The juggling of the lines and the people who contributed was also maybe the biggest positive I took from that game yesterday.
Yeah, so the Gonsalves-Cirelli-Gensel line was put together on Saturday. There was a point on Saturday when John Cooper, unhappy with what he was seeing, moved Hagel onto the Point Kucherov line and had Gensel play with Cirelli and Gonsalves, which may have been the first time those three were together, because I don't really remember, because Gonsalves was not really in a top six for much of last year. The brief looks that he had, I think, were with Cirelli and Hagel. I may not be remembering that perfectly correctly. So they continued into Monday's game, and they scored on their first shift. So they had a very good first period as a line. I thought they had a good game as a line. The Holmberg-Gourde-Bjorkstrand line, and again, you might ask John Cooper this question. I'm not sure that he would necessarily give you the response in the way that I'm going to offer up an explanation for how this came about, but it certainly worked. Holmberg has been slotted kind of as a center. He played center in Toronto, and he didn't spend any time with Gordon Bjorkstrand in training camp or the preseason. I mean, I asked Yanni, who joined us post-game after the game yesterday. Holmberg was really centering the fourth line, whatever we want to think of as the fourth line, earlier in camp with Gergensons and then another guy, and then he got hurt. So he didn't come back until the very end. But they had him at wing with Gordon Bjorkstrand. I actually really liked Connor Geekie at center near the end of the New Jersey game. So the Lightning put him at center, and it looked like he was skating freely. I thought he was trying to impact the game in a positive way. I think it may have been only in the third period. And if you noted, Greg, Connor Geekie was the fourth line center yesterday. To me, I took it as Geekie showed well at center. So he got a game at center, but they weren't going to make him the third line center. They made him the fourth line center. Holmberg had been, I think, on the wing with Geekie when they did it in the New Jersey game. But they basically moved Holmberg up. Like, let's see what happens here. All of this talk that you and I had during training camp, interacting with the fans, the lines, who's on the second line, Geekie is on this line, fans are getting up in arms. Like, sometimes a line just gets thrown together by hook or by crook, and you're into the regular season, you're like, oh my gosh. I mean, going back a few years, the line of Kucherov, Johnson, and Palat was put together. If I'm remembering right, somebody got hurt. It was early in the year. It wasn't a line that they had together in training camp, and that was arguably the best line in the NHL in 2014-15. So, however the line gets put together, it gets put together. And they had a fantastic game yesterday. Even in the first period, you heard me say in the air, I really like how Gord, Bjorkstrand, and Holmberg are dictating play in the offensive zone, that obviously they got rewarded with two very important goals early in the second. So the line shuffling worked for sure. This was not a perfect game for the Lightning. Probably not going to have a perfect game in game 3 of the regular season, but it was so much better than what we saw in the first 2 games that they lost at home. First of all, one thing we talked about, Greg, like being out of sync, they were more in sync yesterday. And as a result, they had more puck possession, particularly as they built their lead. But another part of it, like you might say, all right, they're up 4-1. It got to 4-3. That's not good. John Cooper was particularly upset with the 4-2 goal where Chernak made a pinch in the offensive zone, unnecessary pinch. Pastrnak, such a smart player. He chipped it past them. The 3 forwards were caught down low. The defenseman, Jordan Harris, jumped up, but Pastrnak got him the puck. So it was a 2-on-1 from the Bruins blue line all the way down the ice. And Harris scored. A 4-1 game becomes 4-2. And now, like, things have shifted again, right? Mm-hmm. That was an avoidable play. So the Lightning made some defensive mistakes, and Johansson, you're right, had to make some saves at certain points. You're not crazy about seeing a 4-1 game go to 4-3, but, and Eric touched on this in his article, the fact that it was 4-3 with just about half a game left, it required the Lightning to reach a level of defending that they were able to reach in the second half of the game. Their penalty kill, which was a big reason why they won the game, they went 5 for 5. The last one near the end of the game was only 8 seconds, but it was a 5-on-3.
Yeah.
Because it was 4-on-4, goalie pulled for 5-on-4, Lightning got a penalty. 5-on-3. Like 8 seconds left. If you lose the face-off, a team can score on a 5-on-3 that early. Cirelli won the draw. We can get into the face-offs in a little bit, and Cirelli in particular. So the Lightning were able to kill that one off. But the 2 earlier ones, the 3rd kill and the 4th kill, happened when it was 4-3. The Bruins had a chance with a power play goal to tie the game. And the Lightning got through those kills. That was huge. So I don't know that it was bend but don't break, but the game changed. And the Lightning were not going to be a cruise to victory team yesterday once it got to 4-3. But they reeled it in. I thought that was impressive and important. And I mean, like, how many grade A chances did the Bruins have in the second half of the game? Lori hit the post on one of the power plays. That was in the second period. But I thought they did a reasonably good job of limiting chances. There was a chance during the 6-on-5 before we had the penalties on Point and Arvidsson. Bruins had the goalie on the bench, 6-on-5. They went on the rush after the Lightning had squandered an empty net chance. The puck came to Geekie in the slot. I think he shot it, but it was blocked, and it came to the side to Pastrnak, the last guy you want to see with the puck in the stick, and Johansson made the save. I didn't check the play-by-play to see if they credited that as a shot, but when I saw the replay, I'm like, that was a shot, and Johansson covered it. I think that led to then the scrum with Point and Arvidsson. That was a chance, but it's not like the Bruins were generating grade A chance after grade A chance. So I think the Lightning deserve high marks for having to win a grinded out sort of game. Will that matter the next time they're in a grinded out sort of game? Who knows? But, they had to face some adversity yesterday because they blew the 4-1 lead. But, as Coop said, they built a 4-1 lead.
Sure.
They built a 3-0 lead because they did a lot of good things. They were still probably a little more loose than the coaches would like defensively. They had some turnovers in their own zone, but you know what? So did the Bruins. The Bruins had allowed 5 goals in 3 games. They came in as one of the best defensive teams in the NHL. Early days, yes. But look at the goals the Lightning scored. Gensel forces a turnover on McAvoy. Leads to goal 1. Zadorov throws, as they say, a pizza up the middle of the ice in his own end, right on Gensel's stick. Leads to the second goal. What happens on the third goal? Andrew Peeke tries to clear the zone. He puts a run on Moser's stick. Moser holds it in, and that was that Holmberg play where, he made the highlight reel pass to Gord. But the reason the Lightning scored that goal is the Bruins turned the puck over in their own end. So all teams have problems at times, and the Lightning were able to, as you have said, Greg, it's not just it's us, it's us, it's us, it's us. Like there is another team out there trying to force mistakes.
Yeah.
So the Lightning should get credit for forcing the Bruins into these mistakes that led directly to Tampa Bay goals. They're facing another very, very good defensive team tonight, and we're going to see what happens. So those are kind of my general takeaways from yesterday. I think the Lightning, they just played a lot better. They were better defensively.
Yeah.
They needed to be. They got a good goaltending performance, but they were more in sync. They played more with pace. They were able to get their pressure game going. The line shifting certainly worked. Moser had an impact. He led all players in ice time. I thought he had a terrific game. I didn't make him a star, but he had the assist where he intercepted that outlet from Peeke right before the Gord goal. And we'll see if they can, complete the back-to-back sweep and get back to 500 tonight.
I think what's exciting are the individual performances. Now, if collectively those individual performances can perform on that specific line, then that's a big, big deal. But it was good to see Holmberg contribute in a meaningful way. Because I also think, too, when you're a new player, a new acquisition, oftentimes you don't feel like you're part of the team until you make an impact somewhere.
Yeah.
It's like getting that first hit or scoring the first touchdown. You feel like you belong. Not that Holmberg ever questioned that, but at least with this team, you want to contribute, and he did. I thought Cirelli was a big deal.
Yeah.
Cirelli's guy's coming off career high in goals last year. Now the face-offs we can discuss if you want to. I'm not sure.
No, yeah, we should definitely get
I'm not
into
sure
that.
what to make of it other than do the statistics bear out that eventually that will get better, and that's what you hope for, because what else are you going to say? Because Phil will talk about face-offs, and he'll say it's not only the centerman's job, but it's also his line mates. And I'd have to go back to all these face-offs, partner, and say, okay, were there how many 50-50 are they losing? Or are they just clean losses?
Yeah.
And maybe that's something I have to start paying attention to a little bit more. But the fact that he won a couple late, let's take the positives. But a couple of goals, that's a big deal. Also, too, Brandon Hagel hasn't gotten where he needs to be yet. That can be a positive in a way because you expect at some point he's going to start contributing in a very big way. So you feel like that's going to happen at any time. Hopefully it starts tonight. But the fact that Cirelli got going, Holmberg got going, these, and maybe the different line combinations that we talked about, Gord and Bjorkstrand, with Holmberg, I think that's all very positive. And there are some things to harp on for sure. And we've got a bunch of questions starting to spill in. In this instance, this early in the season, it's good to focus on the positives because by default and by history, the Lightning are probably going to be improving in some of these areas that they're struggling in 3 games in.
Well, certainly we hope so. They're going to need to improve.
If they don't, that's going to be a problem.
Right now, they rank as a team 32nd out of 32 teams in face-off percentage.
I mean,
and
that's a bad number.
This game was bad,
obviously.
but it was the first 2 games too.
Right.
The first game against Ottawa was closer. I think it was 30-25 Ottawa, but we kind of talked about it after that game that it seemed like Ottawa won a lot of important face-offs. Lightning did not have a good game against New Jersey in the circle. Cirelli was actually the best guy they had.
Yeah.
Point was the one who struggled in the New Jersey game. And then everybody had a rough 50 minutes. They kind of pulled it together in the last 10. Point actually finished, according to the stat sheet, 7-6. I think he won some in the third to get him over 50%. Just a quick note on Holmberg. When the Lightning signed Holmberg, one thing he said was, I feel I can produce more offensively. He's not been a big point guy or goal guy in his NHL career playing in Toronto. But you can see that he has the ability to make plays. I mean, that pass he made to Gord was a high-skill play. He alertly went to the net, and the goalie scored. Bjorkstrand shot it wide, and Holmberg was able to stop the puck and sweep it in before the goalie could recover. And then on top of that, he had 2 other chances. He had a breakaway in the third period that he put over the crossbar, and he had, I think it was a rebound chance, but it was an in-alone chance in the second period after he had scored. So look, not only did he have a goal and an assist, he had chances on top of the plays that led to points. So that was a very positive sign for him, positive sign for that line. As much as you and I have talked about this and taken questions about this, like the third line, like that qualifies as depth scoring. The Lightning got 2 goals from their third line yesterday. You can say, well, that was one reason, certainly, why they were able to win the game. The faceoffs. So this Boston Bruins team, like Patrice Bergeron is not on this team anymore, okay? I remember one game where Bergeron against the Lightning went 17-0 in the faceoff circle. That actually happened in a game. When Bergeron was taking so many faceoffs, strong side, weak side, didn't matter. He was one of the best in the game, maybe one of the best ever to take faceoffs. He is retired. Elias Lindholm has been a good faceoff guy, not at Bergeron's level in his career, but he's been good. Like he's been, low to mid 50%. You come in at 55% when you're taking over 1,000 faceoffs in a season, that's really good. People are 55%. Like if you can get to 60, that's extraordinary. So if you take a lot of faceoffs and you're above 50, that's good. If you're in the mid 50s, that's exceptional.
Yep.
So Elias Lindholm, is very, very good at faceoffs. This year he came in over 70%. Now it's a small sample size. He is definitely feeling it, but it wasn't only him. I mean, he had a good day yesterday. He went 18-6. But Fraser Minton, who's fairly new to the NHL, went 8-3. The other guys also did well. So where were the Lightning struggling? They were struggling especially in the offensive and defensive zones. In particular, they were struggling in the defensive zone, and in particular, they were struggling on shorthanded faceoffs. According to the final stat sheet, they won only 1 shorthanded faceoff. Now, the final game sheet I have here says the Bruins went 8-1. They took 1 faceoff away. I guess they made a mistake. It wasn't a power play faceoff. The Bruins finished 7-1 on power play faceoffs. The one that they lost was the one at the very end of the game with 8 seconds left. Up until that point, the Lightning lost every penalty kill faceoff. Who's the one guy who took a lot of penalty kill faceoffs last year that really helped the Lightning, who was not on the team this year? Luke Glendening.
Yeah. We
have talked about what the Lightning are going to do in his absence. The Bruins were really able to expose the Lightning in that on a day where they lost a lot of faceoffs. The Lightning lost, in particular, a lot of faceoffs where you might have seen Glendening last year. Now, look, they don't have Glendening. So, and Cirelli isn't normally going to be as poor as he was yesterday. They had him at 4-20 on this sheet. I think they gave him a faceoff win because now the sheet online says 5-19. So of those 5 faceoff wins, 2 came in the last minute or whatever it was. He had a very, very rough game, and he's not normally going 5-19. But he had to take a lot of faceoffs on his weak side.
Yeah.
Which he wasn't having to take last year. So do I expect the Lightning are going to stay 32nd in the NHL on faceoffs? No, I do not. But we talked about what are they going to do with a defensive zone draw to the right of the goalie? And to this point, they really haven't come up with a solution for it. And it was only due to their excellent penalty killing and Johansson that the Bruins were unable to capitalize. When you go 7-1 on power play faceoffs, where most of those are coming in the offensive zone, like you're starting with the puck. They had 9 shots on their power plays, the Bruins. None went in. So the Lightning's penalty kill has done well, but they've been under pressure. And I will just say this. Yes, there are a lot of faceoffs where Phil is like, that's the winger's responsibility. I felt yesterday the Bruins were winning them clean. They were.
And
I felt those pucks were going right back to the defenseman. Yeah.
That's a problem because if you're losing that cleanly, you can't have your wingers help you.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Again, we need to work on that in practice. I mean, you can only do that so many times, though. I mean, that's one of those things where it is mano a mano in that instance. So you just have to hope the guys who are struggling in the faceoff department just get better.
Yeah, and I mean, look at Cirelli. So Cirelli had to take a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
He was either on his weak side, usually against Zacha, or if he was on a strong side, he was dealing with Lindholm, who we've talked about is off to this amazing start on faceoffs. So the win was definitely in their face in the circle, and we'll see how they do tonight. The Caps have not really distinguished themselves so far this year in the circle. They, as a team, are under 50%. But, I mean, the Lightning are far below that.
But that might not matter.
You're 32nd through 3 games.
I mean, at this point, you may do better in the face-off circle at this point. It's not ebbs and flows, and they just might be in a rough spot, and you have to weather the storm here until guys get back to the average.
And that's where Finley not being in the lineup may have actually, worked against the Lightning a little bit last night.
Maybe.
Now, the fourth line didn't play a lot. I thought Douglas, in his limited role, did fine. He had a little work in the offensive zone there, but that whole line didn't play a lot, including Connor Geekie. But when you're into a game where you're like, we are really struggling in the circle and we're having to kill a penalty, let's send Finley out there with Cirelli, which they did against the Devils. So no matter what circle the Bruins picked to start the power play, we have a guy on a strong side. They didn't have Finley available last night or yesterday because they didn't dress him, and Point doesn't kill penalties. So, and Point was having a rough day until the final 10 minutes anyway. So we'll see. We'll monitor it.
Yeah.
Face-offs are important, though. I mean, if you've listened to our broadcasts at all in the last 20-plus years that Phil and I have done games together, as a former center who took face-offs very seriously, you know how he feels about it. And if you listen to me talk at all, like it is one of the most important non-goal assist point stats to me that is out there.
Does it make you appreciate the Luke Glendennings a little bit more? Not to say you didn't, but maybe people out there.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Look, the Devils. So this is going back a little bit. Michael McLeod got into all the legal trouble with the Canadian junior hockey team. I think I saw he signed overseas somewhere. There's some controversy. I think did Carter Hart sign somewhere? Fans can let me know. McLeod did sign a contract, I think, in the KHL.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's over in Russia.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Before that happened, Michael McLeod played for the Devils. He was among the very best faceoff guys in the NHL. Like the year that they basically suspended the players, the 5 players, and were like, you're not playing anymore. McLeod was actually leading the NHL in faceoff percentage. Now, he didn't have as many faceoffs as some of the other guys like Crosby or trying to think of somebody. Lindholm actually takes a lot. He didn't have the quantity of faceoffs, but the faceoffs that he took, he was winning like 60% of them. So the Devils have missed that guy. So I can see the appeal. McLeod's right-handed. I can see the appeal of a Glendening. They brought him in on a PTO. He earned a spot, and he can fill a role for them. But I think the Lightning felt, first of all, Luke is 36, right? Mm-hmm. And the Lightning, I mean, to an extent, it looked like Holmberg was kind of filling the spot that Glendening had been in. They got a younger guy. And look at what Holmberg just did in the last game. Yeah. But he's a lefty. He's not a righty. And we'll see how the Lightning handle this moving forward.
At some point, players like Glendening, a little bit older, even though the cap is going up, you do have to make some decisions that are hard. And those are the ones that sometimes you move on from the veteran who's not an impact player, but serviceable, and you replace them potentially with a younger and cheaper option, maybe with a little bit more upside. It doesn't mean Glendening doesn't have value. Clearly he does. He's still in the league.
Yeah. And in fact, in that game on Saturday, the Lightning had pulled the goalie and they got a power play for a 6-on-4. They had a lot of shot attempts. I just want to say this about Saturday's game. The Lightning did not play better defensively, which we were talking about after opening night. They didn't improve in that regard, and they did not improve in the area of being in sync. And because they weren't in sync, they didn't have a lot of possession. When they had possession, they weren't getting a lot of shots. It was another game where they went long stretches without shots or even attempts. The fans were groaning every time a guy in the middle of the ice didn't try a shot, passed to the side. Happened actually right before McDonough's goal on the entry. I think it was Hagel was in the middle, passed to the side to Cirelli, and Cirelli kind of bobbled the puck. They didn't get a shot up, but they held it in. McDonough eventually scored. They finished with actually a decent amount of shot attempts, but a lot of those came literally after they pulled the goalie when they were down 5-3, right? Yeah. They pulled Vasilevsky, whatever it was, 2.5 minutes left. I think that they had 19 shot attempts in the last 2 minutes or something. I may be overstating that, but I counted them, and I think that's right because they had 6 shots on net, and 13 were blocked by the Devils. Devils blocked 13 shots when the Lightning had the goalie on the bench, and some of those came because the Devils got a delay game penalty because Markstrom shot the puck over the glass. One of those blocks came from Glendening on Radish. Radish had it right in his wheelhouse. Glendening stuck his leg out and blocked the shot. So, yeah, he has value, but the Lightning decided to move on. Great guy, great teammate, filled a very specific role for the Lightning, but the Lightning felt probably they needed a little bit more beyond face-offs and penalty killing and shot blocking, which is why I think they were very interested in getting Holmberg when he wasn't qualified.
And we got the Luke Glendening tribute.
We had the Luke. It was a briefer tribute than some of the others.
What was the I mean, I always found this funny. The Lightning's record when Luke Glendening scored. Were they undefeated? Yeah. They were undefeated, I think, right?
For much of his time in the 2 years, but it was like 11 or 12-0. It wasn't. It wasn't 42-0.
No, it was like it was.
So
it
I mean,
was
it tells you like
it was
when he scored, it was kind of.
It was a big deal.
It was not a regular occurrence.
It was a big deal.
Right.
All right. Now
and the fact that they won the game when he scored usually.
That is true.
Yeah.
Now I have the ability now, partner, to move comments that I see onto the screen. So Steve, I'm going to see if I can do this. Look at that. Serena just said Glendening.
Yes, one extra N in there, Serena, but that's okay.
I would agree.
Take your question.
I would agree with that. Let's go to this one. David John. The season is early on, but it looks like way too many opportunities for opponents from high danger places on the ice. You don't want to give too many opportunities from the hashes, that's for sure.
That is true, David. I think the Lightning allowed fewer against the Bruins than they had in the earlier 2 games, but it was still a number, for my liking, that was too high.
Yeah.
I mean, Johansson made those saves at the end of the first period. I think it was a McAvoy one-timer that Pastrnak tipped. Like, that was one of his best saves of the day. And then, fortunately for the Lightning, the rebound just missed Pasternak's stick. So they did give up some looks in dangerous areas, including the Mittelstadt goal. So the 3 goals that the Lightning allowed all came in the second period. The first 2 came, we'll say, shortly after the Lightning had scored. The first one came 30 seconds after the Lightning had scored. Might be like, what did the Lightning do wrong there? To me, that was more of just a great shot from Mittelstadt. It reminded me a little bit of Gord's goal against Markstrom, actually, that Gord scored against the Devils in the high slot, and he put it basically right under the bar. It was a really, really good shot, but it was a shot from the middle of the ice off the rush. The third goal, the Morgan Geekie goal, that is also a great shot. I mean, it's right off the faceoff, another faceoff loss. That was one that hurt the Lightning because it led directly to a goal. Yeah. He snapped that. I mean, that's bar down, far side. That's going to be a tough save for a goalie to make, just based on how goalies play the position. For me, the Harris goal was the one that Johansson, I guess we'd have to talk to him, but I know it's a 2-on-1, but you got a defenseman shooting the puck. He's on his strong side. He beat Johansson's short side, and it wasn't right under the bar, but it was a 2-on-1. That one, to David's point, was not in the middle of the ice. So, yeah, I mean, you want to limit high danger chances. You want to limit those opposition shots from the middle of the ice. But you're going to give up some, and I thought Game 3 was an improvement over Games 1 and 2. So let's see if they can get even better tonight.
You want to see improvement.
You
I
want to see
appreciate
improvement.
that.
Yes.
Tampa Bay says having Lilleberg out there is still a concern with his careless penalties, but him and Crozier weren't too bad together rather than with Radish.
So look, this D-core may still be a little bit of a work in progress, figuring out, who's going to play with whom. They did have Moser on the right side. They could move Moser to the left because they have 3 righties. They have Radish, they have Crozier, and they have Chernak. We'll see. I don't think Radish is going to sit indefinitely. I don't know that this is like a fait accompli, if that's the right way of putting it, that these are the 6. Because as we talked about, the Lightning are still having some defensive problems. I know that that's more than just the 6 defensemen, but
yeah,
Crozier continues to impress me, though.
I don't think he comes out. I mean,
no.
if you're talking about finding your 6 and you don't want to dress 7, I don't think Crozier's in this discussion of sitting.
Mm-hmm.
Lilleberg, I understand. I mean, I think because of the style he plays, a little more physical, and maybe gets himself out of position a little bit more because of that.
It was an early penalty. I think
Yeah.
that was what the fan was talking about.
It was a hook, I think, at 17:44 in the first. Is that what he's discussing?
Yeah, or as in 2:16 into the game.
2:16
So
into the
shortly
game,
after
yes.
Cirelli had
Yes.
scored to make it 1-0.
Correct. So, the thing with Radish, I don't mind his game at all. I like his offense. He provides something back there. I do think he can add a little bit of a physical presence, too. He's a sturdy guy.
Mm-hmm. He has 3 points this year, too, tied with Crozier for the most among Lightning defensemen.
I don't know. I think, and then there's a part of you that says, do you want to allow Lilleberg to kind of work through this because he's a younger guy and you want to give him those opportunities? Does playing with Crozier on a regular basis settle him down if you think his game is a little bit more up and down right now? I don't know.
I don't think his game is up and down. I think he's been terrific.
Who?
Crozier, you mean?
Crozier. I meant
Yeah.
Lilleberg. Like,
Oh,
if you think
okay.
Lilleberg's
I thought
game,
you said Crozier.
No, well, if he's playing with Crozier to settle him down and be
I
more
got you.
consistent, then maybe that's the route you would go. I don't, who knows? Bruce says, poor face-off game. At least when they did win a face-off, it was during the penalty kill.
Well, that was the one at the end of the game,
Yes.
Bruce. Before that, they'd lost every single face-off on penalty kill. Cirelli won 2 of his last 3. One came during, it was even strength. I can't remember if it was 6-on-5 or 5-on-4. It may have been 6-on-5. And then he won the one in the last 8.7 seconds or whatever it was. How about Pasternak making that skate save on Hagel?
Incredible.
That was fantastic.
Well, and this is what I mean about Hagel, because I do think he gets one, he'll feel better about where he is. I mean, this is your typical slugger who's in a slump, shooter who's in a little bit of a slump. Like you need to see one go in, and then I think his game
He had
may
the
come
chance
together.
on that 3-on-1. That
know.
would have made it 5-1. He just ran out of room a little bit. I think he's been sniffing some opportunities. I mean, he does have an assist, I think, this year. I liked him on penalty kill with Cirelli, other than the fact that they couldn't win faceoffs. I mean, the Lightning did a pretty good job of applying up ice pressure, which Hagel and Cirelli are very good at that. There was one, I think, in the second period where they had the puck down the ice in the Bruins' end for much of the first minute. It wasn't just them. With Gergenson's injured and Holmberg, who would be on penalty kill, took 2 minors yesterday. We saw a fair amount of Gord and Gensel on penalty kill. Now, we're used to seeing Yanni kill penalties from his earlier time with the Lightning. Gensel didn't kill a lot of penalties last year. He has that in his repertoire.
And we've seen him take faceoffs too.
We've seen him take
Gensel
faceoffs.
times
But, remember
that.
last year they had Glendening and Gergensons,
Right.
who often started because Glendening was taking the faceoff. And then, of course, you had Cirelli and Hagel.
Yeah.
It's not often you're getting to that third forward pair, right? So Gensel saw spot duty on penalty kill. He's seen more this year. He's actually leading the Lightning among forwards in average ice time. He's over 22 minutes a game because he's playing power play.
Yeah.
And he's getting a dose of penalty kill, at least at this point. If Gergensons continues to be out long term, let's say, I mean, we'll see. I do believe Gord and Holmberg may be a pair. Both can take face-offs, even though they're both lefties. We'll monitor that situation.
And we don't have an update on Gergensen. I know a lot of people have been
Coop said
asking
week
us.
to week.
Yeah. So who the heck knows really where that goes? Michael says, where do you think the lines will settle once Zemgus and Paul come back? 1 through 3 look good, but not sure who comes out, and if Paul would be best suited in a fourth line role.
So we are not even 1 week into the Lightning season. I know we're 1 week into the NHL season. Look at all the line combinations we've seen already. So I'm just not comfortable answering that question with any kind of certainty. Coop will set the lines. We may have more injuries. We may see some really effective play from a line. He doesn't want to touch the line. And so he works guys coming back from injury into a different spot. When Nick Paul is able to play, Nick Paul will play. And, the same with Gergensons.
I don't think he's a fourth liner, so I'll go that far. He's going to be somewhere in the top 9.
They'll find a spot for him.
Yeah.
And
Bruce
he can kill penalties too, Nick Paul. Yeah.
He also says, when you're losing faceoffs, why were they icing the puck when the Bruins pulled their goalie?
So I'm trying to remember the icings. Gensel had one. I actually didn't mind the Gensel icing because he was under a little bit of duress. And the first thing you have to get the puck out, right? And it was a little bit unlucky that the puck didn't slow down. It could have because it was flat. There may have been another one that I wasn't as crazy about, that somebody was shooting for the open net and missed. But I actually didn't mind how the Lightning handled the 5-on-6 and then the 4-on-5 and then briefly the 3-on-5, other than that one chance Pastrnak got, which was kind of off the rush and a scrambly play. They tried to get it to the net and they almost got a bounce, the Bruins. But, I mean, there was a reason why Kucherov and Hagel had 2 cracks at the open net. The Lightning were getting the puck out. Unfortunately, they didn't finish. One of them was due to Pastrnak making an unreal play. The other one, the Lightning passed out of a chance to shoot. It was Kucherov. He was just inside the blue line on his off wing. So his stick blade was toward the middle of the ice. It looked like he had an opportunity to shoot. He tried to pass it to Hagel, and it was a little too far in front of Hagel. Had it been on Hagel's stick, Hagel would have had, clear sailing right to the open net. But they weren't able to score the empty net, or they would have ended the game. And then you had the anxious moments down the stretch. But the fan was asking about the icing. I remember the Gensel one, and I remember thinking he made sure he got the puck out. He was under pressure. It just happened to be an icing. I don't think that he was shooting for the open net. Those are the ones you want to avoid. Get the puck out. Don't try and score an empty net goal from 175 feet. Because if you miss, it's coming back to a face
unless you're
off in your
Kucherov.
own zone.
A lot of times you put your best player out there who you feel can make those opportunities, but that's a risk. And when you're struggling to win faceoffs, it becomes a bigger issue. Dio says top line plus minus is terrible.
Well, that is true. So they've done some damage on the power play in game 1, but they've been out for some goals against. Now, I will say yesterday, Kucherov took a -2. One of those minuses was the geeky goal off the faceoff. Kucherov had nothing to do with that. I mean, it was the center who lost the faceoff. I think it was Gord. And that was a great shot. I believe the other minus they took, was the Chernak pinch. So if we're going to actually target someone on the Lightning as carrying blame for that, looking at the Lightning players, let's see, where did they take their other minus? So I see Gensel, Cirelli, and Gonsalves on the Mittelstadt goal. The Harris goal was the one. Yeah, Point, Hagel, and Kucherov. So look, that was an avoidable goal against, but none of the 3 forwards made a mistake. They were caught down low. That's a situation where Chernak needs to back off. And at the very least, it's a 3-on-2 if Pastrnak tries to skate out of the zone.
Sure.
If he just chips it forward, it's a 2-on-2.
Right.
And they almost scored, too. That was right after Hagel almost scored on the 3-on-1.
Nick says, in all 3 games, we've had a phenomenal start, but then seem to go flat the later the game goes. Do you guys think this is a conditioning problem or something else?
Well, Nick, the New Jersey game, I think they had an okay first few minutes, and then
Did
they
they
gave
have
up
great
the first
starts?
goal. Well, they did have a lead in the Ottawa game, and they had a very good start yesterday. The New Jersey game, I think he's referring to maybe the first several minutes where they pressed the attack a bit, and then they had a penalty. And I thought after the penalty kill, they got through it. The Devils kind of grabbed control of the game, and then they got the goal from Meyer, and it was all downhill from there. So the Lightning didn't have a good first period cumulatively against the Devils, getting outshot whatever it was, 16-2. I think Nick's point is, like, in the first few minutes, it looked like they were okay. I think within a game there are swings of momentum, and there are points when the wind is going to be in your face. I think that was probably what happened more yesterday, which is why when we started the show, I actually liked the Lightning's last half of the game because they really had to dig in. I don't think that was a conditioning problem. They did go quite some time in the third period without a shot on net, but unlike the other 2 games, where I think it's clear that either they didn't have possession or they passed up shots, this is the other bugaboo that we've seen at times, and it drives Phil absolutely bonkers. They missed the net a lot. They were shooting in the third period, in the first half of the third period, before they got their first shot on net. What did they finish with? 5 shots on net in the third period. And by the way, I think the Hagel shot that Pastrnak stopped is not a shot on net. Technically, it's a block shot.
Interesting.
To me, that's a shot, right?
Yeah, I feel like that's
so you want to give them 6 with the empty net.
I get
but
it.
earlier, like, they were trying to shoot, and they were blasting shots wide of the net. They finished with, unofficially, 19 shots that missed the net, 23 on net. So I think that was maybe one reason why it seemed like they were a little quieter offensively in the third period.
Look, I think a lot of that is momentum. When another team is buzzing, it seems like they're playing faster, and maybe you are in quicksand a bit. I think the other thing, too, is, look, we're 3 games into the season. If things look a little helter-skelter at times, these guys are still trying to find that chemistry with one another. I think when you do that, you play faster. They don't play a ton in preseason. New guys are breaking in. Look at John Cooper juggling the lines. That is part of this. At some point, it'll level off, and you'll start to see the Lightning play the way they're capable of for more than 20 minutes. You heard me say often, a 60-minute game is near impossible, but if you can get to 45 or 50 minutes, man, that's a big win. We're not there yet. I don't expect them to be a finished product 3 games in. I expect them to be better, hopefully, game in and game out, and not go through stretches where it's 2 weeks and we're asking these questions. Boy, they look slow or they look tentative. I don't think that's going to happen with this team. Let's see how tonight plays out. They should be better tonight than they were yesterday, and that's what I'm hoping for. Here's a question from Michael. When Andrew Chuck got here in 2001, he used to walk around the room during the second intermission with a 1-goal lead and say, "This game is over. They're not coming back. 3-goal leads should be automatic wins."
Yeah, I've told that story. Maybe Michael heard it from somebody else. I mean, I don't think that happened in 01, though. Lightning were
saying 01, they
were
were
still
that good,
struggling. But as they got to a championship level, yeah. So it was a 1-goal lead after 2, and Andrew Chuck would basically encourage the team. It's like they're getting nothing.
Yeah.
In the final 20 minutes.
Listen.
That's a team that was playing basically at a championship level for the second half of the 03-04 season and through the playoffs. You'd like to be able to say that. Early in the season, you do see leads evaporate. You do. It is not pleasant when it happens. We talked about this after the Lightning lost to Ottawa, that it was not great that they gave up a 3-1 lead. But what bothered me more, if we go back to Friday's show, than blowing the 3-1 lead, was the fact that they gave up what was basically the game-winning goal. I know it was not, but it was the 4-3 goal with less than 2 minutes left, so they didn't get points out of the game, and I didn't like how they defended. So that, to me, I mean, if you're not going to defend well, you're going to have a hard time protecting a lead, unless you continue to keep producing offense or you get an amazing goaltending performance. So yesterday, yeah, they had a wobble in the second period, but they were able to correct it. So that's the way I would look at it.
It's always fun. Those messages resonate a little bit more when you have a better team. And the stakes are higher.
Right.
We're in the Stanley Cup Finals. It's over. They don't get any more. Okay, I can say that when I have Hall of Famers up and down that lineup. In 01, it might be a little bit different. You want to go out
when
there
you're the
stuff.
worst defensive team in the NHL, whatever that team was last year, I'm not even sure what it was. Like a one goal lead in the third period does not feel as secure. Right?
We gave up 5. No more. We're not giving up that 6th. So I think, Mike, I think you bring up a good point. I think a lot of that is where your team is. And I think we all anticipate the Lightning have blown some leads. They've scored enough goals to win these games. I don't think this is a problem long term, and I think it will get rectified. It's that right now it's a little off kilter, and let's see if that plays out, the rest of the way.
This is actually a good segue to the Lightning's opponent tonight. We'll get to your question, Timothy, here in a second.
I'm going to hide it, and then we'll go back.
Okay. Ooh. So the Capitals are just like the Bruins were. The Bruins entered the game yesterday, having played 3 games. They had allowed only 5 goals. Excellent numbers. The Capitals have played 3 games. They've only allowed 5 goals. And in some ways, maybe even more impressive than what the Bruins did, because the Capitals, their 5-on-5 differential is 6-1. They've allowed 1 5-on-5 goal in 3 games. Now, there was an empty netter in there, which technically counts as an even strength goal. That was the one game they lost. They lost to Boston, actually, in their first game 3-1. Then they beat the Islanders 4-2, and they got maybe a little bit of a goalie steal from Charlie Lindgren. They shut out the Rangers and MSG 1-0. So how did the Capitals win the division last year? What did the Capitals do exceptionally well last year? Spencer Carberry won Coach of the Year. And I understand why he won Coach of the Year, because they had a much, much better year than the year before when they kind of eked into the playoffs and got swept. So they had been a good I think they got into the playoffs 2 years ago because they were a good defensive team, or they improved defensively. But even still, they were kind of a middle-of-the-pack defensive team. Last year, they got better defensively, and they got huge offensive seasons from a handful of players. Dylan Strome had, I think, 29 goals. He led their team in scoring. Remember our interview, which I still remember like it was yesterday, Jack Michaels, after the Four Nations, talking to us from Tampa, and he's talking about the Capitals. Like, who would have thought Alexi Protas and Connor McMichael would have counted for all these guys? Yeah, Alexi Protas had over 30 goals last year. Connor McMichael had almost 30 goals last year. And Ovechkin had 44 goals last year.
Incredible.
So they not only defended, they scored like crazy. And when they were up, they locked it down. When they were down, they could rally, right? They ran into Carolina in the second round of the playoffs. Carolina outplayed them. They did. So Carolina deserved to win that series. They won in 5. Usually if you win in 5, as we know from Lightning Panthers, the team that deserved to win definitely won if you're winning in 5. So the Capitals lost in 5 games. What are we looking at this year? They're defending, but they are not scoring.
Yeah.
Not nearly as much. Protas has 2 goals. He got 2 goals in the Islanders game. Ovechkin doesn't have a goal. He's 3 away from 900. But they haven't had a lot of power. They are 0 for 8 this year in the power play. So their power play percentage is 0. But they've only had 8 chances. Their penalty kill is just over 50%, but they've only had 7 kills. Mm-hmm. They've killed 4 of 7 penalties. So why are they doing well? Which I would say you're doing well if you're allowing under 2 goals a game, even though it's only 3 games. Much of their games have been played 5-on-5, and they are outscoring the opposition by a wide margin early this year, 5-on-5. So what we saw yesterday, the Lightning were able to get some great chances against the Bruins. They were. Korpisalo made a handful of saves in the first period. That game could have been 5-6-0 Lightning, or at least the Lightning could have scored 5 or 6 goals in the first period. Gensel had a chance at the side of the net. Gord had a in-alone chance. He put that over the crossbar. Like, they had some great, great looks. Let's see if they get those looks tonight. If the Capitals are going to come in and play the way that they have been playing defensively and get the kind of goaltending that they've gotten, Lightning may have a hard time generating chances, which means that you better defend at the level the Caps are defending.
Defend, and you better win some faceoffs.
Yeah.
Because now possession time becomes a big deal, particularly in the offensive zone, if you're trying to generate some scoring opportunities there. Phoenix Copley tribute tonight in Washington. How many games did he play for when he was in Washington?
So many goalies have been in Washington.
A few. I think Copley's only played 75, I think, NHL
and a
games.
lot of those came in L.A. a couple of years ago.
Well, that's okay. Look, we do tribute videos today, even if you've only played for half a year.
But he's already been back to Washington, maybe. He probably was back the year that he played a lot of games with Washington.
I want to know.
With L.A., I'm sorry.
Phoenix Copley tribute video tonight in D.C. Let's do it, boys. What's Tim say? Tim says, since the big boys didn't play much in preseason, I believe it's going to take a few more games to get in sync. Do they miss Perbix? Ooh. Do they miss Perbix? I mean, look, Perbix, it can't hurt. He's a veteran defenseman. I don't know if he's making a big impact. We're talking about things like not shooting the puck as much as you'd like and winning faceoffs, which has been a big problem. Have there been some defensive breakdowns? Sure. I don't know if Perbix solves those issues. That's not to take anything away from him and his ability. He's a solid defenseman. I think it goes beyond one player coming in and solving some problems. To his former point about the big boys not playing as much in preseason, I do think there is an adjustment period. I think as a coaching staff, if you're not going to play your stars a lot in preseason, there needs to be a little bit more give early in the regular season to get these guys on the same page. We've seen lines juggled, and I think John Cooper is looking at that and saying, I'm trying to get these guys going. Is that a product of them not playing a ton in preseason? Could be. I think you live with that, though, if you're a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning, because you want to preserve these guys when the games matter, and you probably also feel like they're going to figure it out pretty quickly. All right, they're 1-2 after 3, so hopefully things change tonight and they even it up at 2-2. So I think there's some of what you said, Tim, at the beginning, I think makes some sense. I think they're working through some things. I think early on, games in the NHL, the first 20, sometimes I think feel a little disjointed regardless. Mm-hmm. You're trying to get into the flow of the season. You're breaking in new players, new systems, new voices. So I do think it's an adjustment period for all teams.
I mean, the Rangers are a great example. So they opened the season, they got shut out at home by Pittsburgh. They go to Buffalo and shut out the Sabres. They go to Pittsburgh and score 6 goals?
Yeah, they pounded them.
And then they come home and they get shut out by Washington 1-0.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's less about defense and more about offense, but in 2 games they scored 10 goals or 11. What was the final score in the Pittsburgh game? 6-1?
Yeah.
Okay, so they scored 10 goals in 2 games. In the other 2 games, they've scored 0 goals.
Yeah.
Kind of to your point.
Yeah. I think you're going to see more games that are outliers in the first 10, 15, 20 games than you would the latter 40, 50, 60 games where things are more in flow and more in sync. Not to be confused with the group. Kyle says, very impressed with Crozier. I mean, what was the term they used in preseason? Gamer? Mm-hmm. You feel like Crozier just does a lot of things well.
Yeah.
He
plays
with
urgency. I mean, that's what and you want everyone to play with urgency. And not urgency in like a reckless way, but like he plays on his toes. He gets his nose dirty. But then when he doesn't need to get his nose dirty, he just makes good plays with and without the puck.
Agree. His pants are on fire. D.O. or do, whatever. Lilleberg hooking penalty was a BS call or BS weak call.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. That was the one at the beginning of the game. I actually don't remember that. So I'm sorry, D.O. You may be right. I actually had generally less of a problem with the calls on the Lightning and more of a problem with the fact that the Bruins were not getting called for some penalties. Which
I know that seemed odd, didn't it?
It seems to be a little bit of a trend this year. Now, the Lightning were down on power plays against the Devils, and they got a couple late. But 2 of the 3 power plays they got against the Devils were automatic, puck over the glass.
Yeah.
So those are automatic penalties.
Right.
One stat I always look up, and it becomes a little bit more informative the deeper we get into the season, is special teams differential, which is not, I mean, I always look up chances and chances against for power play and penalty kill, or time shorthanded, basically. But I also look at the minutes. The league produces, a filter where you can look at basically time spent on the power play minus time spent on the penalty kill. So the teams that are at the very top, like once you get into February, like they might have 65 minutes more on the power play than on the penalty kill. The Lightning are way underwater early in the season relative to other teams. I think they've been shorthanded like 8 more minutes already than they've been on the power play. Now, if you score on the power play, that shortens it, and the Lightning have only allowed 1 power play goal, which is good. But I think it goes to the point that other teams are getting power plays and the Lightning aren't. And what I'm seeing is some plays that could be called as penalties are not getting called. Hedman was tripped in the third period, coming out of the defensive zone, no penalty, and probably whatever it was, 2 minutes later, Holmberg gets called for a tripping penalty. Was it Holmberg?
Yeah, Holmberg.
Yeah. No, it was Gonçalves.
Or
I'm
no.
sorry. Gonçalves, Holmberg
Yeah.
took 2 penalties. Gonçalves got tangled up in the neutral zone.
Right.
And it was Arvidsson. Arvidsson fell. I'm like, all right, well, he did kind of lock skates with him. How is that? Okay, if that's a penalty, why was there no penalty called when Hedman was tripped? That's what's happening a little bit early in the season, but hopefully it'll even itself out.
Some would say that's been going on for 20 years, partner. We can't figure out the officiating. Talk to
Yeah.
Chief and Phil, and those guys have a hard job. I get it. There
They
are
do.
some inconsistencies, and I also acknowledge that as well. By the way, I think Point wanted to go with Arvidsson last night at some point.
At the end of the game.
At the end, he wanted to go.
Yeah,
And
they
we've
gave
seen
him
when
roughing minors.
When Braden Point wants to go, he'll go.
Well, he's still in line to win the Lady Byng because he's only gotten 1 minor so far.
Is Patrick Hornqvist still at 0 penalty minutes?
2
That was one of the greatest.
in February or March.
Phil looked at that and said,
Phil looks
"What?"
at the stat sheet and he's like, how is Patrick Hornquist on this sheet with only 2 penalty
David,
minutes?
how the hell does that
We
happen?
played 60 games this year.
Hilarious. And that's a fair point, by the way.
Yeah, because Hornquist, would
To
get
say
involved.
that he toes the line is probably the understatement of the year.
Yeah.
Anthony says Douglas needs to be sent down. He can't skate on the NHL level. Therefore, he can't hit or forecheck. You anchor the whole 4th line with him. We have 4 better players. This is insanity. Interesting.
Well, Anthony, we always appreciate your enthusiastic posts. I will call that an enthusiastic post. If the Lightning try and send him down, I think they're going to lose him. I think Utah will just reclaim him and send him to their AHL team. So
there was
a
a need for
reason
him.
why the Lightning got
there's
this
a
guy.
need
And
for him.
I'll just repeat, like, he's played 2 NHL games.
Yeah. Right.
So the Lightning, I think, want to work with him to get his game where they can probably confidently play him more than 5 or 6 minutes. The 4th line had a tough minute game yesterday, in part because the Lightning were shorthanded a lot, and none of those guys kill penalties as the 4th line was constructed. I mean, if Holmberg's on the 4th line, he would kill penalties. But you had Connor Geekie, Douglas, and Chafee. None of those 3 guys kill penalties, and the Lightning were shorthanded a fair amount. And then the game got tight. You're protecting a 1-goal lead, and I think Coop basically went to 3 lines in the 3rd period. So that was one reason why their play was limited. A big man like that is not going to be like quick moving around the ice, but I think he's using his stick in a smart way, Anthony. And let me put it this way. To me, he does not look out of place. I think that his game has room to grow. I think he knows the game. I think that he can use his assets, notably his size and his reach, to try and, help affect positive play for his team and for his line. So we'll see.
He was.
I was a
brought in-
little. I mean, I guess on some level, I was a little surprised that he was not asked to go or didn't go with, because the Bruins have some,
Yeah.
players that Janot, Kastelik, Zadorov. I mean, all those guys will
Here's the other
certainly
thing.
fight.
Maybe he asked them.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't want to go. I mean, time and place. And here's the hidden value Did you think having him present on the bench or allowed for that game to not get out of control potentially?
Yeah.
You're never going to know, but read between the lines here. He was brought in, I think, a very large part because of what he can do to deter the opposing team of taking runs at the Lightning players, specifically star players. Part of that, though, is he's got to show that he can play on some level, which is why they brought him in. If you believe the Lightning can develop talent, and they've shown over the years, partner, that they do that well. Now, this may be more at the NHL level than at the AHL level, but to Anthony's point, if you feel like skating is the biggest issue, is that something he can develop at the NHL level while still playing? Can he get better with his skating, working with the Lightning staff, while still serving a role up here because of his skill set? Anthony also responded, nobody cares about stage fights. He can't hit star players. Understood, but this isn't about stage fights either. I mean, I think we saw the one game, and everybody assumes that's how it's going to play out.
Yeah.
Look, if somebody takes a run at Kucherov, I don't know. There are ways players can get even. Talk to Brian Engblom about this in Chief and Espo.
And you've said the presence of Douglas on the bench acted as a deterrent, even though he only played 4 minutes or whatever.
Look, that's not going to convince a lot of people. I get it. You're going to have to play. In today's NHL, you can't be a Christoph Oliwa and skate up and down and play 3 minutes and have your one fight per game. I completely acknowledge that. That's why I think this is where you have to look at the Lightning and say, yes, they got him for a big reason in that he could fight. But also, too, he's got to be able to play a little bit in today's NHL. This isn't like 30 years ago where you can just bury somebody and play him for 2 or 3 minutes. We'll see. I may be wrong. And we'll have that conversation on this show, noon to 1, weekdays.
And I'll just close with this. It was Anthony it was Anthony.
It was Anthony, yes.
The Lightning have some players at the minor league level. You see that Dominic James has goals in the first 2 games. He scored in overtime.
Look out.
Yeah.
Look out.
I mean, I don't think Stahoviak got on the board, but I mean, Syracuse went into Hershey and won 2 games.
Yeah.
And Peltier is having a good start to the year, too. I mean, all 3 of those guys I thought
positive.
did well
Yep.
in camp. And again, as I've said, I would not be surprised if we see one or all of them in the NHL at some point this year.
Makes sense. Love the interaction. We're going to do that more tomorrow. Now, we are going to tape tomorrow's show. So we want to make sure you get
Lightning are coming
questions
back
in.
home.
Yes.
So we've got a pre-tape tomorrow and we've got a pre-tape Thursday because the team is leaving back out on the road for Detroit.
Yeah, for sure.
So get your questions in ahead of time.
Pre-game at 6:30, game at 7. I'll talk to you closer to the puck dropping.
Brian Engblom on the call with me tonight because it's an ESPN game.
Wonderful. Partner, great job as always.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You too.
Thanks to Steve Ersnick and everybody who listened. I am Greg Linnelli. We'll be with you again tomorrow. Listen to the show weekdays, noon to 1, right here on Lightning Radio.